Hey everyone, welcome back here to my channel where I play Plant Zoo. My name is Nissa and today we are building a habitat for this big tackled flying fox and the North Island Brown Kiwi, because why build a normal habitat when I can build a fort? So if you want to see how I built this or learn a little more about these beautiful animals, then please keep watching. Okay guys, as some of you guys know, I just love making these hybrid habitats for multiple animals, and I thought the idea of combining the kiwi with the bat or the flying fox would be kind of fun, because they're still both nocturnal, and at the same time I didn't want to just make another bad habitat for Planet Zoo, because the exhibit boxes makes it limited how inventive you can be, and I just thought the idea of building these two together would work really great with the little bird on the ground and then the flying bat in the air, so the guests will have something to see whether they look up or down. My inspiration today were more like thinking more of home than I have built in the other habitat, because as some of you guys know, I'm Danish and we are not that exotic of a place, but we did used to own the earlier Danish West India island. I believe they are Caribbean islands, I'm not completely sure to be honest, but the thing is that we went there, we conquered them, we got them, they're ours, we built a lot of fortresses, and then we just left. And a lot of islands around the world have had people coming and conquer it for a position in the ocean that just are beneficial, and then building these giant forts and then just leaving after that. And these fortresses, some places they are really well regarded and well kept, and you are not allowed to do a lot with them, and other places around the world are just having way too many of these, so if someone wants them they can pretty much get them, because they are really expensive to keep thriving and standing over time. And it would be kind of fun to think that this zoo actually was built around this surrounded area of a old fortress, and maybe parts of the fortress were really bad and had to be taken down, and then part of it could be utilized in this manner. So this is not about building something new, it's more around repurposing something that was already there. Of course, a fortress would have multiple walls surrounding it. That is clearly gone at this point. I will also close off the old path to the roof, because we don't want the guest up there, even though back then it would have been a great vantage point. We don't want our guests to get up there where it's really a long way down. This unique kind of building gives me the opportunity to both keep the animals happy without actually building a nocturnal habitat or a nocturnal house for them. I didn't want to build another night house. I just built, I believe yesterday, for the Tasmanian devil, and I do believe that the guests would go kind of crazy if every single habitat was just another nocturnal house. So this allows me to keep them in there with stone walls, which stones are really nice as keeping a constant temperature, so it wouldn't get too warm or too cold either way. And at the same time, I do believe they will shut out a lot of the light. I will put light inside, of course. In the right now I'm building the light for the first floor, which will be very lighted, but as you can see there's of course stone between the habitat and the light. And on the first floor, where a little bit of the light will get into the habitat, I limit the numbers of lamps, so it will be less light than this. We also have windows on this second floor, so it won't be dark like the Tasmanian devil habitat, but it will still be like a cave-like feel because of the rocky walls and caves are where bats are the most of the day. I will just mention that I did actually search for fortresses on King Island, and the only thing I found were King John's Castle, which should be quite something to go and view. So if you are in the area, it looks like it's not all there. Some of the parts looks pretty much like ruins on the pictures, but it is certainly there, which is also again quite impressive for some of these old buildings that are still standing. Anyway, we have 2 animals to talk about today, so we better get started. I will just mention, I'm gonna start with this big tackled flying fox. It's also called spectacled fruit bat or spectacled bat. As you can hear, I have really hard time saying the word, so I will say this flying fox to specify it, and I will try to specify if I talk about flying foxes in general or bats in general. Though the bats actually, and this is bats in general, are pretty much not like other animals. They are kind of their own thing, but they are still in the mammalia class. When we look at the order, we are in the Chiroptera order, which hold 1,278 different species. It's not always I bother to look at the order, but what's quite unique here is all these 1,278 species are bats. They have their own order, their own unique thing, but there's 1,278 of them, which is just something I really want to push through, because I think a lot of us just think as bats. I know I have seen quite a few bats here in Denmark, but I'm not even sure if they're the same species, because for most of us people, I believe bats are bats. And I feel a little bad saying that, because as you know, I love to focus on different subspecies and such, but that's pure honesty. And for family, we are looking at the Pteropodidae, which is the family of megabats, also known as fruit bats. These are generally bigger than other bats, therefore megabats. However, I believe there is a few bats where that's don't fit. Most of the bats in this family will either have the genus of Acerodon or the Pteropus. And what we are looking at right now is the Pteropus, which is the flying foxes. And if you want the full Latin name, it is the Pteropus conspicillatus. And it's really weird. I find it easier to pronounce their Latin name than their English one. This flying fox is not itself native to King Island, but both its really close cousin, the gray-headed flying fox, live there, which is within the same genus. And then we have 2 other bats, which will be the lesser long-eared bat and the wattled bat. That is all 3 native to King Island, though the flying fox in this case is natively to mainland Australia, but flies occasionally to King Island. Because of this, this is extra important to keep our bats inside and away from where bats from the island would go, so we don't share any possible disease backwards and forwards. Instead, our flying fox here today are living a little further north and stay primarily within Australia. This will be the northeastern part of Queensland, as long as some islands, for instance Papua New Guinea, and Woodlark Island, Alcester Island, and Kirivina Island, and actually also a Indonesian island called Halmahera, I think it's pronounced. Okay, just to focus a little bit on the build here, what I do here is my really easy trick for not making animals escape in the game. I actually thought that these are what's they called, the flappy doors that keeps the bat in, that they would be heavy enough to hold a bird on this side, so that's why I really didn't do anything with it, and I just used this cheating trick instead. Had it been a bigger bird such as a cassowary, I don't know why I would want that in a walkthrough exhibit habitat, but in this case, if it was something like that, I would actually have built something to keep it in, but I do honestly believe that these should be enough to keep them in. If it can keep the bats in, that is roughly around the same size. These bats do prefer to stay in more like fully grown environments such as forest and rainforest, and sometimes they will venture more out in a anthropogenic biome, but again, anthropogenic biomes are most of the time human based, so it's not necessarily their choice to live in these areas. It's more like where they live was transformed into this area. They also stay within the tropical climate zone, which is really humid and really well suited for a lot of thick plant growth. Also why I do not have any thoughts about putting this much foliage in here. As you will notice, I only put the foliage in this half of the habitat where the bats fly, because this is where the light will come. I also have dirt all around, but only a few, like a very splashes of grass where the sun would actually have a chance to grow through. I want this because I want this to be a old kind of, maybe a servant area, so you will have not that high to the loft underneath on the side, but you will still have a place where you will have a big door, so you could get kind of a wagon in if you got supplies for something big or something. So that's the idea of this. Of course, we have multiple different entrances here. We have 4 entrances, 3 that the guests can use and 1 that just goes directly to the building with the Tasmanian devil habitat. Just to bring in more flow, the guests can flow through this building from multiple ways, and especially since this will be the restaurant building and we also have some shops here. So you would, for instance, not be hungry when you get here, and then it will still work in a way where you can circle back around from a different route and go back here when you then are hungry and not have to just go back the same way you came. These bats are extremely, I was going to say solitary, but that's not the word, social creatures, quite the opposite. They actually can gather in these groups, which are called camps, and these camps can hold up to 10,000 or more individuals, and that's basically when you have found a really nice place, you don't have to leave it, or you don't want to. A lot of animals don't want to, but if the animals are built in a way where they want to be solitary, then they will make each other go away. But since they actually can accept each other and don't have to fight all the time like other animals, they just can go with the flow and say, fine, I'm here, you here, we can stay. And then when you get more babies, there's just gonna be more and more individuals. Often when you think about frogs, you will think nocturnal animal, but these are actually not. I know there's a few species of them that are not, but the thing is that the fox or the bats don't sleep a whole lot, and they don't sleep enough to be able to sleep the entire day. So what they will do is they will be less active through the day. And since these are living in foresty areas, they will not gather in caves and such like some other bats will do. These will instead just find a nice tree to hang up in. We even have a few in here that they could live in without issues. Though it will take that turn of the tree when we have these giant numbers of bats. And again, these have a decent size. I believe they weigh between 500 grams and a kilo, yes. And that will be between 18 and 35.3 ounces. Again, it's not a lot when there's one. But in these giant groups, it really can take that turn on a tree. But they will still be less active through the day than they are at night. The day will mostly be just hanging under this tree, hanging out with the other bats of the camp and just socialize with them, even be vocal with them. And again, if you have these giant groups of tens of thousands of bats, it can be quite noisy. When the sun goes down, it's time for the bats to go out and forage, and they will fly quite a distance to make sure to find enough food. Again, a lot of bats, probably everything close by is already eaten, so they will actually fly up to 70 kilometers, which is roughly 43 miles per night to make sure to get enough food. But one thing that they really are lucky on, most animals only are able to drink fresh water because the salt just isn't good for anyone, to be honest. But the flying foxes can actually both drink salt water and fresh water, which makes it so much more easy for them to just simply work when you live in these more islands mid in the ocean areas. And they simply drink by flying over the water and then just skimming the water they need, which I would love to see. If anyone knows of a video of that or something like that, I would love to see it, because I believe it must be kind of halfway beautiful, halfway really weird. And that's just my sweet spot of humor. Anyway, let's focus a little bit of our North Island Brown Kiwi, also just known as the brown kiwi. It currently have about 35,000 individuals left, but this is actually enough to make it the most common kiwi in the world. It's not impressive because it's just because the other are closer to extinction. It's not because this necessarily is thriving. However, it also have a world record of the largest egg compared to size, which is also quite a accomplishment, but not a thing I would be happy by being the one to hold either. When we look at the spot for the North Island Brown Kiwi, we are looking at the class of aves, which is again aviary. It's flying animals, or animals that in some point in their evolutionary development were supposed to be able to fly. Again, this is clearly a flightless bird, but it does still belong there because of its genetic and possibility for either have been flying or being able to fly at some point in its evolutionary development. Anyway, there is 5 different kiwis in the world, and they actually have their own order, family, and genus all the way down. And the genus is the Apteryx. And that makes the North Island Brown Kiwi the Apteryx mantelli. I'm not sure I understand this geographically correct, so if we have any people in the comment section that knows this better, please correct me. But New Zealand is kind of two islands with a bunch of small islands also, but two main islands, and there's the North and the South Island. And the North Island Brown Kiwi is named for basically being the one that lives on the North Island of these two islands. It also does live on some smaller islands in the area, which would be Northland, Coromandel, Eastern North Island, Aroha Island, Little Barrier Island, Kavau Island, Honoi Island, and the Wanganui region. Again, I'm not completely sure I understood this correctly, but it does seem like they belong on the north part of New Zealand. Because of this, they live in the temperate climate zone, so not in the same as these flying bats, but I'm pretty sure that they live where there are some bats, and a lot of animals are not racist in that manner, so a bat is probably a bat for the most animals. For biome, we are looking at the scrubland, anthropogenic, and the forest biome, which making both of these animals anthropogenic and forest. This is kind of easy to work with for most animals. But they are really suited for this kind of lowland feeding, going and picking in things, either in the bottom of forest or in the scrublands, where there will be a lot of good stuff that other, probably bigger animals won't spot, and therefore just leave behind when they're done eating. I was debating on whether or not I should build a splittable habitat once again, but it wouldn't really work with the bats. But the thing is that the kiwis are really solitary creatures and only have anything to do with the opposite sex during breeding season. However, I didn't find anything about them being specifically aggressive towards each other. So there's a difference between not choosing each other's company and actually trying to hunt the other to get the other one away. So I figured that it would work. However, I chose to give them 2 burrows so they could live like in the same habitat but have each a home. These birds are nocturnal and therefore will spend most of the daytime in their burrows, which is also why I kind of wanted to give them kind of nocturnal habitat where I can control the light, so I could give them some fake light through the night and therefore they will be awake through the day. As long as you do it constantly and there's UV in the light, so they will like give fake sun, it should work. Because otherwise these guests would disturb them a hell of a lot. But as you saw with the foliage, I pretty much built a wall and then a wall of foliage outside the wall to give half the habitat this very peace and quiet feel to it. Again, stone walls, they isolate a lot sunlight, sound, and temperature, so we will have a constant temperature in here, and the animals will have a lot to hide behind and just kind of having the opportunity to have a little quiet around them, even though the guests actually are inside their habitat. Normally these birds would have multiple burrows within their territory and they will actually build them themselves. We hear of a lot of animals that either find burrows and eat what lives there and then move in, or just find some forgotten burrows that no one's are using and just move in there. But these can actually dig them themselves, which again, no arms. It's quite impressive. However, if they want to, they can also simply hit and take a nice little nap, either in a hollow tree, under a log, or just between some roots. Again, these can technically fight a little bit with each other, but they are not built to take on anything bigger than themselves, clearly. again, no arms, one beak, and if you damage that, then you're pretty much fucked. However, one feature I really find fascinating with these animals is the fact that they are solitary. They do not have anything to do with the opposite sex besides when it's time to mate, but they are monogamous, meaning they use the same mate for life, which means they will actually be able to meet up, recognize, and somehow know this mate enough to live with them and not throw them away when they see them and such. I don't understand how this can work in an animal brain. Again, a lot of animals don't have the same development of brain capacities as we do. I do know we have talked a lot, especially with chimpanzees, where they have developed sports and such, but something like not seeing a other animal for such a long time and then go in and say, oh, I know you, you're my boyfriend, we're gonna mate, it seems just a little weird to me. But maybe you have a better grasp of it than I have. Anyway, I believe that's all I have time to tell you today, so enjoy the cinematics and I will of course come back afterwards. Okay guys, that's all I got for you today. I do know some of the cinematics here is weird, but maybe you noticed when I was building. Sometimes when I record and I use these artificial lights in the game, sometimes it just acts like this with these giant pixely things, and I don't know how to fix it, sadly. So if anyone knows, please tell me. But for now guys, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification so you know the next time I upload a video. I really hope to see you again, either in the comments below or in the next video. Bye guys.